Loading.
Good morning, Delegate Impalaria.
Good morning.
It looks like we are live and the YouTube is off. So welcome everyone to the Harford County Delegation Meeting, week of March the 11th at 9 o'clock. And I'm going to ask Delegate Arkan if she would lead us in a word of prayer, please.
Let's bow our heads, friends. Heavenly Father, please give us wisdom today as we move through some difficult waters down in Annapolis. And also please be with all of our constituents and all the citizens back in Harford County who are counting on us to keep them safe and to keep roofs over their heads and jobs for them to work. Please protect them and please protect everyone down here who's trying to do the best they can for the people of Harford. Amen.
Amen. Okay, and then we're going to have Delegate McComas is going to lead us in the pledge. Everyone,
Please stand, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you both for that. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. And I want to welcome Dr. Bolson, who is our Harford County Superintendent of Schools. So welcome. I believe, well, we sent him several questions and he's going to take this time about 20 minutes to answer those questions for us. And then we will have in alphabetical order, I'll go through the delegation. They'll have 2 minutes to ask another question or have a comment or a follow-up question. And then Dr. Bolton will have 2 minutes to answer or respond, and then we will move to the next person. So we will stick to that 4 minutes, and then Cindy will use the timer, and we will let you know when your time is up, and we'll move on to the next member. And I believe that will bring us pretty much to the end of our hour because we do have session at 10 o'clock. So please be courteous to the rest of your colleagues and keep to that time frame. So Dr. Bolson, you are on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to address your questions, and also, as Delegate Riley indicated, thank you for providing some questions in advance. Allows me to hopefully tighten up the answers a bit so we can get through in the time. I know you always have a hard stop right at 10. So I did reorder the questions a little bit so that I could just sort of group them. And so I'll let you know where, if you're following on your list, I'll let you know where we are with the questions. I thought I'd actually start with what was the last question, which had to do with recommendations for increasing the efficacy and frequency of communication. So I currently meet quarterly with individual county council members, monthly with the council president, bi-monthly with the county executive, and regularly with a number of other leaders. When I set those recurring meetings up, actually that was back in 2019, I did reach out to the delegation, and I'd be happy to sort of put something in place, because I think what we've found is when there's an agenda item to talk about, it's often too hard or too late to get things, get things scheduled. And so if we have some regular check-in points, I'm very happy to do that. Those one-on-one or small group type meetings have been fruitful in the other venues. Last summer, we began producing a regular update for our Board of Education. At first, we just sent it to the board, then we realized it would be helpful for all of our other community leaders. So you started receiving that a few months back. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. It is Friday. It comes out on Fridays, and it does cover a lot of sort of pertinent information. Much of it is public, but there are some things really it is designed as a communication to the board, so you get some insider information on that. And then, of course, and I know you all have a wide range of legislation that you've sponsored. From my accounting, just looking at your legislation list, just ones you're sponsoring, I see about 11 education bills and 5 additional bills regarding children's well-being. And so it would be those would be good to talk about in advance, to talk about offline. I'd be happy to, interact with you on those. I know Delegate Griffith and I have spoken a few times with some of the ideas he's thought you've been bringing to the table. But I would certainly welcome more interaction with all of you on your legislative ideas. So let me turn the corner now. A number of the questions related to the in-person learning status. I did group all of those together. And so the next question is one that you originally had as question 1, which is to briefly review the back to school plan for students, teachers, school workers, bus drivers, including safety measures. That is easily an hour presentation. So I'm going to give you some details. And if you have specifics you're interested in, I'm happy to share. A lot I can say on that. The current status briefly is, we're starting March 1st. We brought elementary students back for 2 days a week, many other students back for 4 days a week based on sort of unique needs and circumstances in their educational program. So our elementary students are in place. Our expectation is that they will be moving to a 4-day-a-week status for anyone who wants to be in person starting on March 29th. This is a little bit contingent on where our metrics are, but I'll get to that in a second. Students in grades 6 through 12 return on Monday, beginning with a 1-day per week hybrid. But then our expectation is to move to a 4-day-a-week for the secondary students on April 7th. And that will allow them to have the majority of the fourth quarter in person 4 days a week. Details for the safety measures as well as the protocols for a variety of instructionally related topics are in our continuity of learning plan. It's on our website. It's growing because we're always adding more to it, but it's right there. It's updated regularly. I discuss it at the Board of Ed meetings whenever we have changes. And then with the particular request about the safety measures, we have a lot of details in there. They start on page 26. So I'd be happy to answer any questions related to safety measures, maybe in follow-up if there's specific things, because there's quite a lot there. Question that was originally question 7 is what metrics are being used to justify the current less than 5-day in-person school day? Our current status actually is right in line with the CDC's latest guidance. If you look at the CDC's operational strategy for K-12 schools through phased mitigation is the title of the document they have posted on their website for schools. It's a 3-page document. Our metrics, which unfortunately over the last about week and a half have started ticking back in the wrong direction, particularly with our new case rate. We are currently in the substantial transmission category, which is the orange category on the CDC's COVID data tracker. And in fact, with the uptick we've seen the last couple of days, we are on the verge of returning to the high transmission status. So that is something that we need to keep an eye on. However, barring any major spikes in transmission, and I'm talking major spikes in transmission, we have indicated we will be relying more on the school level transmission when we talk about any adjustments to our schedule coming up. We have our students in, we're able to see the transmission that's occurring there. As of yesterday's data, the last I've seen, we have had, I believe it was about 10 positive student cases, and I think a similar number of adult cases. I have to go back and look at the data. I've looked at so much the last couple of days. We've had a number of cases. What we haven't seen is evidence of transmission among them in the schools. And so what's happening with the new testing that the state has provided, when people show up with symptoms, we're able to test them there on the spot. And then, we send them home if they have symptoms. But then we know if we learn that they're positive, we then have to go out and look at quarantining the other students. So we've had some disruptions related to that, but fortunately with the testing and the other factors, we've not had a lot of transmission. So I think we're doing okay. We do expect to end the year at 4 days because right now our surveys of families and those who are planning to be in, we still have about 35% of our families who have indicated that they're staying home. And what that means is our teachers need to teach in both places. And so the fact that the teachers still need to be planning both for in-person and for virtual and be able to check in with all those students, the 4-day is where we expect to end it because that 5th day is a time they have to focus a little more on the students who are virtual. But that will take me to what was originally question 2, when will we be back to full in-person school? And so we can't totally predict the curveballs that this pandemic is going to throw at us. because we hear about variants and all those sorts of things. But with the vaccine rates going up, and we've been fortunate. I know we have at least 60% of our employees have had at least their first shot, and the number of vaccination doses coming into the county is increasing. I feel pretty confident that we're not going to see those major disruptions that change the course of this. And our current planning is for full in-person schooling in the fall for those who are interested. We will be offering 100% virtual option for students who want to remain virtual. What we've talked about locally is we want to centralize our virtual offerings so that the remaining 53 schools will run the virtual out of our alternative education site. But our remaining schools will be completely freed up to focus entirely on in-person learning 5 days a week with, all of the kind of regular things you expect from school. But we do know that even in the fall, because we're not likely to see students vaccinated, that we're still going to have a number of safety measures in place. And so it's still not going to look exactly like, school as you and I knew it a year ago. There was also a question, this was originally question 6. Have all issues surrounding virtual learning expressed by parents been ironed out? That's a pretty big question. So just touching on the virtual learning piece, every student did receive a device, and you'll recall there were some delays early on, but we've gotten devices to every student, which was really significant. But you're also well aware of the broadband issues confronting Harford County. So up to this point, we've given out nearly 900 hotspots, over 800 of them to students, and then fewer than 100 have gone to staff to help them with connectivity, but we know the hotspots aren't the perfect answer. I was really encouraged to see the county executive announcement last week about partnership with Think Big to provide better broadband to the northern part of the county. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on my time here because I want to get through these. So I'm hoping, anything on broadband and connectivity is something that we need to continue to work on locally at the state level and with the federal government. So any efforts where we can collaborate on that, we want to be a big part of it. So we're happy to see that the county is making progress. The original question 3, what are we doing to help students prepare to pass standardized tests? This has been a crazy year, and we do know that there have been academic impacts on our students. We do know that just with closure, everything with virtual learning, all of this has had an impact on our students' academics. We have some very robust plans about how we intend to both do the academic recovery, but also to help students kind of recover on their own time. We are targeting the students who have failed courses, and that's easier at the secondary level with the way we do the grades. At the elementary level, we have assessments that we are using to assess reading level, math level. We're able to do that locally. And so we are beginning now with this 4th quarter as students are back to target the students who we've seen slipped. But we also have, I think, what's going to be some really creative summer offerings and things that'll carry us through the upcoming probably couple of years, because we do need to do this a little bit on the terms of the individual students. Our summer offerings will be a mix of in-person and virtual, whatever fits families' needs the most. And we have had tutoring in place, individual tutoring for those who've been interested in accessing it. So again, to help with this recovery, to help provide extra support. So we have a lot of things going on with that. Senator Pinsky did join the superintendents last week. As you know, he is the chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. And we've interacted with them a fair bit around some of the education issues. I understand that the Senate made some adjustments, or has a recommendation that the budget be adjusted to provide more funds for the student recovery and summer work. So I'd encourage you to take a look at what's happening there. There's a lot we'll be able to do for our students. I think one of the challenges we're all going to confront is finding the people, pay is one thing. We have the money to pay people, but finding the people who can do the work, because everyone, adults, students, everyone is pretty tired right now, but we're going to get the people in and get the work done. I touched on this a little. What is the plan for getting the students Harford County back on their proper grade level? This was originally question 4. At the secondary level, we're doing what we call credit recovery. We use a virtual program for that we've used for years. We have over 800 students currently enrolled in a credit recovery model. And so we're creating all sorts of options to allow people to make sure that they don't lose credit going out of this year. And again, we've been tracking the performance of those students. Are doing a lot to reach out to them. And as I just talked about, there's a lot going on with the summer as well. The next question has to do with fall sports. And I know that other districts have, done abbreviated seasons for the fall and the spring. Right now we're actually aligned much more with Cecil County, where we're doing a full spring season. That season will start Monday. I mean, when the decision was made about whether we should do 2 abbreviated seasons or the 1 longer one, we were still in the high transmission rate with the CDC. And, but also part of that decision, and again, people disagree, there's been concerns biasing toward the fact that the spring season was the one that was completely canceled last year for our students. And so being able to offer that to those students was the direction we went. And I know it's different from some districts, but unfortunately also those systems that started in February then spent 2 weeks dealing with ice, snow, rain, weather. And so those abbreviated seasons have even been abbreviated more. So we're excited to offer, what is hopefully a full spring season starting this coming Monday. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. The next question was about the proposed, some of the legislation that affects us. There's been a lot of legislation, as like I said, I know that just this delegation alone, I think has 11 different bills related to education specifically, and I think another 5 related to children's welfare. Probably the biggest news, and it's been the headline for a couple of years, is of course the blueprint legislation. I'd suggest with regard to the blueprint legislation, if you look at the big picture of it, the most important element is the efforts to expand pre-K. So whatever discussions occur going forward, knowing that I believe will have the longest positive impact on school systems. But, in a way, that's where I think the Kerwin Commission started with pre-K. So making sure that we follow through on that's important. But also, one of the challenges with pre-K is that if we do expand that universally, we need room in our schools to have those students. And so, attending to the capital side of that is a really important element. We are just beginning, I'm sure you've begun getting letters about this, our balancing enrollment, or to use the other word that is less popular, redistricting. We're beginning that process. We're having the conversations. We haven't rolled out recommendations yet. But one of the greatest drivers of that process is the fact that our greater overcapacity issues are in our elementary schools. And so we will need to keep a close eye on what happens with pre-K, because adding additional classrooms there, we need those students in. I think it's a great thing to do, but we need to have room to put them. And then of course, and I said something to this effect to you back in the fall when we met, the blueprint elements, they're very ambitious. And I think each of them alone have very large price tags. And so the one thing I would ask you all, and I know you look at this closely, I know the funding is something you're very, very concerned about. Please make sure if elements are moving forward that there's some accountability that the elements that move forward are appropriately funded, because I do think some of the estimates for how those things are what some of those elements may cost, I'm concerned that some of them are a little low. So any pressure, vigilance that you can all apply with regard to ensuring that the decisions to move that forward are done with the right resources, or not move forward unless the resources are there. So I know there's a lot in that. And I would close, I have a little time. It looks like I'm not about to run out quite yet. I do want to close with a couple thoughts about the SROs. This was originally question 5, but I thought I'd end with this one. So let me be very clear. We absolutely appreciate our SROs and our SRO program in Harford County. They're an important part of our educational mission. You ask questions about the data we collect. We collect arrest data, use of force data, reportable offenses, which are those things that occur outside the school system, but if a student's involved in something serious, they get reported to the schools. Our school resource officers also help with threat assessments and other types of law enforcement. And we're fortunate not just to have SROs who work with us from the sheriff's office, but also from our 3 municipalities who contribute to that. Our reportable offenses and arrest data are disaggregated. And like, every district across the country, our outcomes in those data are disproportionate by race, and that is a problem. We in the school system, and this is a whole different presentation, but we are working aggressively to address the racism that exists in our schools. And again, I can share about some of the things that are going on around that. The racism that exists in the schools contributes to these disproportionate outcomes. I think what we're seeing is more a reflection of a bigger challenge because the racism exists in our community as well. And so I say that because we're not going to solve the racism issue by turning away what is a really great program in our school resource officers. We need to support them. We need to make them part of the solution. They've been fantastic partners up to this point. And so I feel like we're in a good place to work closely with them to be part of our solution. But we do need a broader community dialogue about addressing race and racism. So I would close with that. I think, again, that was originally question 5. I think I'm a couple minutes ahead, so I'm happy to cede that back to the group. I know there's probably questions of details on a lot of these things.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bolson. And Delegate Rickenpler, I do see your hand up, but we are going to go in alphabetical order. And you can ask the question or have a comment. Okay, so I'm going to thank you, Dr. Bolson, for answering those questions. I'm going to move to Delegate Archon. 2 minutes. Cindy, please start the clock.
Can I pass till the end? I haven't decided what I want to talk about yet.
Okay.
Pretend like I have a Z name.
Okay, so next we have Delegate Mike Griffith.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Bolson, good to see you again. I'm sorry I'm going to be brief because I have 2 minutes. So I have a quick, short follow-up question and the question I really want to ask. In your comments that we're in line with Cecil as far as sports goes. I know that's true for the spring, but in the fall, didn't Cecil County have an abbreviated fall sports season?
They did. Yeah, so I was talking about the spring sports.
So I feel like for us to truly be in line with Cecil County and be in line with Baltimore County, I think we should really work hard to try to find a way to get our fall sports in some capacity. That's more of a comment, but the question, so maybe somebody else follow up with me on that. But my question is, the announcement was made earlier this week related to proms. And with the new guidance that came out this week from the governor for large venues, wedding venues, things of that nature, I don't see why we cannot at least try. I mean, there's been a series of times announcements been made and new guidance comes out within days. So if you could please walk us through why we cannot at least try, even if we put them right against graduation. So if there is some kind of spread related to it, it does not affect the school year. But I don't see why we wouldn't at least try to give these kids at least one thing that, because they've missed their entire senior years. Off-site, have them sign a waiver. There's got to be a path forward. Could you talk me through that a little bit, please?
I guess the first question I'd ask is if you've ever chaperoned a school dance. I don't know how prom aligns with any of the safety measures. I mean, our announcement this week was very clear that we are going to focus on those academic things. And I think the governor's announcement did actually provide great support to our efforts to do graduation, which was a huge topic of conversation last year. We have plans in place to be able to do now in-person graduations, and with this information from the governor, we can do that. Focusing on the academic activities, because there's also other academic celebrations where we can ensure some of the safety mitigation strategies. But prom doesn't make sense with the safety, 6-foot distancing and all those things that you're trying to do. And I know the distancing is, there's questions about that, but prom really just practically does not make sense. I know it's something that people really care about. There's a lot that we all wish we could be doing right now. There's a lot more I wish I could be doing right now. But the idea of moving forward. So again, the decision we made was to focus on the academic and support those types of things. But the social events was something we were going to move away from. And so
One last follow-up to that. I mean, with sports, sports does create issues with social distancing, just like prom was. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not understanding how we can play sports but not have prom when we have very similar distance.
I guess, you know, we still come back to that question of which are going to be or do we have priorities, right? Or is everything a priority? Because everything we do, it contributes to the risk, contributes to the disruptions, contributes to our ability to deliver on other things. You know, the fact that we may have opened up large parts of the economy before schools is something that we really haven't had a discussion about. So I think our ability to make sure that we're keeping the students in school for those 4 days has been the priority. We're going back to that. We're going back to that before most districts in the state are doing. And we're doing it, frankly, before our metrics, at least according to the CDC, support it. But we believe we can do it safely, but that's a priority. If we're trying to add every other thing we normally do on top of that, again, that's gonna make it harder for us to deliver the core things, which are the instruction. And then I think, like I said, the graduation is something that we really want to prioritize here. So there are some decisions we're not gonna be able to do.
That's time.
Well,
Okay, time's up.
thank you, Dr. Bolson, for being here today. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Griffith. Now we're going to move over to Delegate Impalaria. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Bolson, and obviously it was a wise decision to come and speak to us today. You know, I guess in your comments, my biggest concern so far, the CDC is making the decisions for the Harford County school system. The school board basically isn't, you're not, the county executive isn't, the governor isn't. And obviously school systems across the United States aren't following those guidelines, especially the private and parochial schools aren't, and they're not having any problems. So it'd be nice if we looked at the real facts. And I hate for Harford County to be in a situation where we're the last one to go back. And it does appear that Harford County is on the course to be the last to start opening our schools back up. And I think that's sad because the CDC has been all over the place and has constantly proven themselves wrong, constantly changes their mind. And our students and our parents want a solid answer, and the CDC is not giving it to us. And if you're following them, you're not giving it to them either. Secondly, I received a number of phone calls and emails about the graduation. Now, I've talked to members of the delegation and they agree that there should be graduation. And I understand that there has been movement on graduation. So could you give us a little bit of information on that? And, you know, the one thing we were saying about prom, you know, kids are kids. And I'm going to tell you, next year, I'm frightened to see what the out of wedlock pregnancy rate is amongst our school students in Harford County, because they have been home and they have been unsupervised and they haven't been doing sports activities. And that number is going to go through the roof. So if you're really worried about the 6 foot distancing, I'm not buying the 6 foot distancing because these kids aren't staying 6 foot away from each other. So could you give us a little update on what your plans are for the prom, or not for the proms, but for the graduations, because we have plenty of outside venues. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's his time.
The graduation, again, our expectation is to talk about more of this Monday night at our board meeting, but the thumbnail is we are in discussions with Ironbird Stadium, of course, our biggest outdoor venue. And with the governor's announcement, that gives us some guidance for what the capacity will be there. So we do expect to be able to do each school. Bel Air High School is pretty big, so we will bump up against the capacity limits there. There will still be some frustration because we're gonna have to limit the number of tickets each family or each graduate receives. So that's always a source of concern, but our expectation is to be able to do that outdoors. We're going to have to move the schedule back, do them a little bit earlier so that we have time to build in weather delays. Because the scary thing with outdoors, whether you're doing a wedding or a graduation or whatever, is you got to think about the weather. And so I don't know that we have that actual calendar finalized yet. And so we have a lot of details around that, but that's what we're looking at.
And that seems to be the best move that you've made so far. So thank you for moving forward, and let's not have any interruptions tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Bolson, for being here. When you mentioned a little earlier about opening in the fall and the kids that choose to come back to school. So when the emergency is lifted and the CDC says, gives you the green light, are the kids required to go back to school then in person? And how long will it take to morph back into an all in-person classroom?
I can't say for certain what the circumstances will be when the emergency is lifted. We actually just this week submitted a formal application to operate our virtual school. And that's something that MSDE, those rules haven't really changed there. But our expectation, because we know that the virus will still be in place, our students won't have been vaccinated. Our expectation is we are going to offer 100% virtual for any student, or I should say any family who chooses for their child to have that 100% virtual option. So that's when I say, so students are still required to attend school legally, but the virtual option will be one of those available. And as I said, right now we have about 35% of families, even though that number is diminishing because once we got students back into elementary, we've had a lot of requests to bring kids in person who weren't originally asking for that. But we are still planning for the fall fully virtual option for those families who want it. But then, like I said, everyone else would be in person at the other schools, 53 schools.
And when you get the green light, how long will it take to morph the kids back into in-person classrooms?
That'll be up to them. I don't think, again, the green light, I'm not sure there's a green light. I think, so the question about the virtual will be a choice. And we're actually going to ask people to make a commitment, I think at least for a semester, again, putting the finishing details on what that will look like if they opt into that virtual school. But I do expect that we'll have higher numbers in the fall, and by the end of next year, the number of students choosing this virtual option will be lower. And I suspect, I think we have the ability to offer a really strong virtual program. We've obviously learned a lot over the last year around that, but that's not about, waiting for a green light or anything. I mean, that's going to be a choice. Those who want virtual will have that option. Those who want in person will have that option as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move over to Delegate Lasanti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Superintendent, it's good to see you today. Thanks for being here. Much appreciated. And I've submitted my major questions in writing, but I have a broader question about public policy. As you and the board have managed this pandemic over the last year, do you think that having local control has been a benefit versus other models where there is state control over education policy and local decision making?
That's a huge question, obviously. I guess it's a function of what control really looks like.
Right.
I think the best decision.
Let me couch this by saying, because I think as legislators we look at this broader picture. We had a very large bill last night on the floor that dealing with public safety, which took a very broad state control perspective versus a local control. And so I'm drawing parallels to education because those are our major pots that we fund. So understand that that's the environment that I'm asking the question. Last year.
Frankly, I support the local, and it's something I try to create. I mean, this is an everyday conversation in the school system, because do I make a mandate centrally? Do I make an announcement about prom centrally? Do I let 10 separate high schools go their own way and decide? I mean, these are the types of things we're doing every day. And the way I manage it is to collaborate with, in my case, it's collaborating with the school leaders so that I can get a sense of what their interest is, and there are some cases where they want more of a central response. In some cases they want cover. In some cases, they just want to be sure that we're more consistent. But in other cases, they can advocate, no, this is a decision we need to make more locally. And that's something we try to create that opportunity as much as possible, because I do think the best, most targeted solutions come closest to the problem. So I'd be looking at the local control as a really important element. But at the same time, there are places, and it has a lot to do with the communication up and down the line. If you have good communication, you can do things centrally. You get the level of consistency you want. But the trouble is, if you're doing something too centrally, you're diminishing creativity and innovation. Now, we're in a crazy circumstance right now. Something's had to be done in an emergency. Central, it works better when you're in an emergency situation. But I think on average, you get better creativity, you get better responsiveness, you get better personalizing of your work when you're making local decisions.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we move on to Delegate McComas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Bolson, great to see you. I have a couple questions that I'm kind of wondering about. The Science and Math Academy, how have they been doing well with this pandemic? You know, the brightest of the brightest that have been accepted, and then they do their capstone project as their senior project.
I think everyone's had their own kinds of struggles, right? And everyone's had to kind of adjust. Now, I'm not sure how much I can speak specifically to SMA, but I could follow up with that for you. But I would say that our students, you know, part of what we've seen is our students who traditionally do the very best have done very well in virtual. You know, they adjust and they've done very well in virtual. So I would argue on par that our SMA students have done as well as anyone in this particular, on average. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be individual circumstances. One thing we found with the student response in this is that a lot of students have struggled, and we know that, and we've seen it in our data, and that's why our recovery plans and those sorts of things are in place. But there are some students who've excelled, who've done even better in virtual than they did in person. And those are the ones we're trying to understand. And we think we may have a long-term virtual option for them, because now we better know how to personalize instruction for those students who really work better in this. But I think that's not a huge number. That's a smaller number.
I hate to cut you off, but
Nope.
a couple of real quick questions. I know that the Bel Air, the theater group, the Bel Air Theater Group has always done great work. And I was just wondering if the chorus and the theater group, have they been able to continue on? Because those programs are wonderful for the students that are interested in the arts and music.
Yeah, I mean, things like chorus and band have been really hard through this. I mean, with the guidance, you know, singing is one of the things that's been limited more than other activities. Wind instruments, again, you know, so any instrumental music, again, has been limited a lot more. And so as we talk through, you know, when we talk about sports, we're also talking about other extracurriculars. And so we're continuing to work on the plans for that. That's something else I can give you an update with, but I do know our supervisors in the arts and in those other areas, we do really want to make sure those experiences are coming back, but we have to watch some of those activities because, like I said, the singing and the performing have been kind of particularly restricted.
Another quick question before I get cut off. I assume the guidance counselors are aware of the senatorial and the delegate scholarships and are letting their seniors know that there may be some money for them to get scholarships and for the graduating seniors.
They know about the scholarships. And one of the things we run into with scholarships is there's so many. There's a lot of sort of modest sized scholarships. And so keeping up with that list, but we certainly want to encourage our students to access all of those. And we appreciate, the ones that come from the legislature also. So yes, I mean, and that work is ongoing. It's just, dealing with the college search and those sorts of things in a pandemic, it's a little different as well, but our counselors are still working full time on that, just as they're doing all the mental health stuff also.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Delegate.
Testimony. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to us that you were able to make this meeting work. And I hope we can work together going forward for the students, families, teachers, and school personnel of Harford County. It's important that we're all in this together. I want to thank you for in-person graduation. You know, those of us that have had kids graduate from high school, we know how important that milestone is. And while tickets may be limited, it's something that we definitely need to do. And the sports teams, that was a huge problem that we've seen. Families really want their kids back in sports. And I'd just like to mention the states that are open. We have family in Texas and Florida. Their kids have been in school full time since August, and they're certainly not thwarting CDC guidelines. So I would encourage Harford County Public Schools not to set up roadblocks and barriers, but find reasons to open and look at best practices and how those other states have done it. They've done it successfully. They've done it under CDC guidelines. But my question to you, Dr. Bolson, is you mentioned in your comments that racism exists in our schools. So I'd like to know, are you saying that teachers are racist? I mean, I'd like you to drill down a little bit more on that.
I mean, you can make broad statements like that. I think we find it in lots of places, and we work aggressively to address it. Our Office of Equity and Cultural Proficiency responds to every sort of racist act that occurs. And, sometimes we get complaints about educators, sometimes we get complaints about students, sometimes we get complaints about things that come in from the outside, and we work to address those. And so the racism does exist, but again, in a way, it's a reflection. We see it in the community also. So it is a community conversation we need to have. We are doing a number of things to address it. And so maybe I'll take a minute just to touch on those. One of them, when I came in and did the Listening and Learn tour my first year here, there was a lot of conversation about the curriculum needing to be a little bit more diverse. And as we did a lot of work to rework this year's curriculum, there was a lot of consideration given to ensuring that we're having a more representative, the resources we use, that we're updating some of those things. Additionally, training for both leaders and teachers. There's been a lot of work this year on training, not just in the area of virtual learning and all that, because that's been a huge area of learning curve for people, but also focusing on, how to create a more inclusive environment for all viewpoints and all. And, discourse and, listening to each other and those sorts of things are areas where I think we're struggling a bit as a society. And so this isn't just, it's not all racism. Some of it is just, again, being inclusive where we can get along with each other. And so some of the training is around that. But we'll be continuing to do work in that area also.
Okay, I have some concerns about that blanket statement that racism exists in the school and that there's inferences there that our teachers are racist and other school personnel. And finally, I'd just like to encourage the county to do a better job in virtual learning, or ultimately get all our kids back in school in person. I had a bill, and the Maryland Teachers Association submitted testimony, was about a virtual learning school. And they admitted in that testimony that the schools have been, in their words, an abject failure in virtual learning. So I'm a little concerned that, the teachers union is admitting that. And in light of that, I just urge you, not more strongly urge you to do everything in your power to get our kids fully back in school as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, time is up on that one. Thank you, Delegate Schlegel and Dr. Bolson. Next, we have going back to Delegate Archon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Dr. Bolson. So I've just been listening to all the back and forth, and I think I just want to make sure I can clarify. Sorry, my thing died for a minute, so I may have missed if this was mentioned. So are we still operating under the 6-foot rule, and we have, is that still the goal?
I'll go back to the word. We've wherever possible. So if you look at our statement, we know, one of the things that we had struggled with through this, and I think, and this is one of the places where this new CDC guidance gave us a little better nuance, the stuff that was released in February, because we've heard wherever possible all along, but the spirit, they just kept doubling down on the 6 feet. Going back to 4 days, as we've indicated at both the elementary and the secondary level here soon, we will not be able to follow the 6 feet, but we have all the other safety measures in place. So that is a place where we're not going lockstep exactly with what the CDC is recommending. That's where we're looking at kind of our local transmission. And that's why I talked about the local experience. So
Yeah, good. That's great. That's what I
back to the
that's
4
what I was
days.
hoping to hear.
Yeah, we have to get away from it. And we're committed to doing that because we feel that again, the experience in the schools, and someone has sent me the update. We've had 10 positive students and 4 positive adults. That's barely a reflection of the community. We're feeling like we're able to continue delivering this in person safely. And so our plan is to stay that course.
Yeah, that's probably significantly lower than the community spread rate. So that's great. That looks good. That's a good metric. In terms of the virtual, permanent virtual option, are we expecting our teachers who are also classroom teachers to do the virtual teaching going? Because that seems unacceptable.
No. Yeah, that's exactly why we're doing it the way we're doing it. Again, we want to separate it. The virtual option available in the fall will be 100% virtual, meaning the teachers will be 100% virtual. I mean, they'll be delivering 100% virtual. They'll probably be delivering from one of our sites, but students will be 100% virtual. But the whole point is, like I said, so that the remaining 53 schools can focus specifically on in-person learning in the more traditional way.
Good. Okay, that's good to know, because I think that's been kind of an impossible ask of some teachers in some districts to do both.
Oh, it's very hard right now. You're right.
Yeah, while teaching children. So let's try to get away from that as quick as we can. Those are my main concerns, besides the fall sport concern that Delegate Griffith referenced. It would be so nice for some of these kids who already missed their junior sports to get a chance to play fall sports. And then I'll just echo what Delegate Impalaria had mentioned as well. We want to see graduation happen. So let's all work together to make sure our kids do not miss another graduation. That is really unnecessary. There are so many places where we could hold it out. I mean, I will host it at my farm. We cannot let kids not have any type of celebration for the work that they've been putting in. And by the way, it's been so miserable for many of them. I mean, there's so many kids that, struggling with this horrible virtual stuff for a lot of them. So we got to do something for these kids. And I want to see them get to put on a gown and smile and get some pictures taken. Hope without a mask on outside.
Sounds like we're all agreeing with the graduation, at least. So again, more details on Monday, hopefully.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bolson, for coming to see us. We do appreciate it. We know sometimes we're hard on you guys, but we still like to talk to you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I guess now it's my turn. So a couple things, just to follow up on some of your comments and the information that you have. Would it be possible that, your secretary could send us either a PowerPoint of your back to school plan that you mentioned? And it was very encouraging that you're getting our schools, that our students back to school by, looks like, the end of April. They'll all be back sort of 4 days a week. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, April 7th for secondary. So
Okay. So if we could get that plan, that would be great. And then also the Friday updates, whomever you're sending that to, I don't believe that any of our delegation members have received that. So if we could certainly, get on that list and, get that update every Friday, that would be very helpful as well. On the legislation, those bills, obviously you had looked to see if we had education bills. It would be nice to, have a letter. I know when we had Kathy Carmela, she was great at sending us updates. If we had bills, she would send us, this Harford County school concerns directly to us, possibly, change it a little bit for it to be favorable. We can or cannot take your ideas, but it's nice to at least, have some communication there. That would certainly help, especially for those folks, in Ways and Means. If you see other bills, we do have another Kerwin coming up. And
Mhm.
if, Delegate Lasante got some information on that, some talking points to help and, what you see concerns in Harford County. And my question real quick, have we lost any students to public schools? Do we know? I
To
mean,
private schools?
to private schools?
Yes.
This, okay.
Right. So our enrollment this year, and again, I think across the state, public school enrollment is down about a little over 30,000 students. We were down 1,100. And there was the two areas where we saw the most growth in our withdrawal codes was homeschool and private school. And I think those were both up a little over 500 students each, which accounts for about our 1,100 students who were down. So we've begun to see the slightest trickle of students coming back as we've done more in person, and that's something that we expect. I don't know if every student will come back in the next year, but I expect we'll see a lot of that return.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Bolson. We did just actually hear our first bells, so they want us to move on and get to session. So thank you so much for coming and joining us and answering our questions, and we look forward to better communication going forward. Thank you.
Everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second, Steve?
Second.
Thank you.